you guys have done a fabulous job here this morning, presenting incredible amount of data. And I can only imagine that people on the other side of the camera have to feel like they've been fed by been drinking out of a fire hose this morning.
Indeed.
We always wonder what it feels like to be on the other end.
Yeah. So Steve, we mentioned today about the volume of capital that's in the markets under asset management, some 24 trillion globally. We recognize your thought leadership is some foundational work going back decades now, relevant to establishing the framework for what we assume today is ESG and investment criteria for social performance and environmental good performance. Can you give your perspective on trends and the behaviors and what your perspective is on that market today?
I certainly can, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And let me just take 20 seconds here to thank Dan Sweeney, and the director of the Institute for Enterprise Ethics here at the University of Denver, and you for inviting me to join you. You know, you've dropped a lot of acronyms this morning, and I hope again that the people on the other side of the camera understand what we're talking about. So if you don't mind, if I could just kind of step back just for a moment. You know, in the beginning there was SRI, and SRI was an acronym for socially responsible investing. And today those of us that use SRI as an acronym to describe investors and investor perspectives tend to think about that as sustainable, responsible impact investing. And so that's the investor perspective. And then the analyst perspective is pretty focused on the ESG, the environment, social governance. And so that's that's where the analytics come into play to help those of us that are looking at potential investments make a more, let's call them enlightened decisions, right? Because ultimately the motivation here is to make money and also to do so by investing in companies that are making a positive impact on the world. Companies of the future, if you will, as opposed to companies of the past. And so sustainability and ESG tend to be reflective of our desire for a better future. And knowing that companies, businesses are probably the most powerful influence on the planet, without businesses acting in a more responsible manner, many of these problems that we all face as a global society will never be solved, right? So I represent investors in the US, $3 trillion worth of investors. Globally, as you said, 24 trillion, who are looking to make money and make a difference at the same time. Make money and encourage companies to be more responsible corporate citizens. There's a lot of ways of doing that. And the analytics and the reports that you've shared with everybody today are incredibly valuable new information to inform this process. It helps us, get better at finding better companies. It helps us identify better management teams, if you will. Because if you think about sustainability, a fundamental characteristic is long-term thinking, long-term planning, long-term decision making, okay? So what we're talking about here from a Wall Street analyst perspective is something very different than the short-term, quarter-to-quarter stuff that many people are focused on. What we're looking at from an investor perspective and in representing my clients is those companies that are taking a bigger picture, longer term, attitude toward their management responsibilities. And as a result of that, we're attracting clients, and we have been, throughout the downturn. More money is coming into the kinds of portfolios that we use in client accounts than in conventional portfolios. So from an investor perspective, this is good stuff.
And as we've seen with today's article highlight that Michael profiled from Harvard on the performance.
Absolutely. Let
me connect the dot here for you. We mentioned in the news hour the aspect of the CDP, Carbon Action Fund, right? So recapping on that, that's a call to action to move from disclosure to action in executing a strategy. Emissions reductions, reporting on the ROI, the investments of emissions reductions. Would you not see that perhaps as a leading indicator?
Absolutely, absolutely. You guys are the analytical guys. I know that, and I'm more the marketing guy. And I want to respect and appreciate that.
It takes a try.
And it takes both to make the world go round. And at the same time, we all understand that what gets measured gets managed. And so measuring these things is incredibly important both in terms of informing investor decision making, but also in terms of helping management teams understand why this stuff's important. Okay?
Well,
and what the impact is of making different decisions on different topics, right? So ultimately, you know, those of us that care about the future and care about the future we leave to our kids, our grandkids, and whatnot, you know, are relying on you, relying on the managers that are that are measuring carbon footprints and water usage and that kind of thing, you know, to begin to change the paradigm in a much more positive way. So, huge
Absolutely.
applause and incredible value to investors.